The air crackled with anticipation as the studio filled to capacity, every seat occupied by an audience buzzing with expectation. The lights cast a warm glow, reflecting off the eager faces of spectators who had traveled from far and wide, drawn by the promise of an unforgettable spectacle. This was no ordinary talk show. It was a live debate featuring two titans of modern American history, former President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump. Their presence alone charged the atmosphere with an electric mix of excitement and unease, a prelude to a clash that would resonate far beyond the studio walls. On one side of the stage sat Barack Obama, his demeanor calm and composed, hands folded neatly, eyes sharp yet warm with a quiet confidence. Across from him, Donald Trump exuded bold assurance, his posture commanding, every gesture designed to seize attention. The contrast was stark, one man a study in measured restraint, the other a force of brash certainty. Even before a word was spoken, the audience sensed the collision of worlds waiting to unfold. Some cheered softly, others sat rigidly, eyes fixed on the stage, aware that this would be no polite exchange, but a battle of ideas, egos, and visions for America. The host stepped forward, his smile tinged with nerves as he attempted to maintain neutrality. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice betraying a slight tremor. "Tonight we have two remarkable guests who need no introduction. Former President Barack Obama and the current President of the United States, Donald Trump." The crowd erupted in applause, a cacophony of admiration and tension splitting the room. As the noise subsided, the host continued, "We're here to discuss the biggest challenges facing America today: inflation, jobs, housing, and the struggles of millions of families." Turning to Trump, he posed the opening question. "Mr. President, what do you believe is the biggest issue Americans face right now?" Trump adjusted his jacket, leaning forward with a self-assured grin. "It's simple," he declared, his voice booming with confidence. "Our country was doing great before, better than ever, but these problems we're facing now, they didn't come from nowhere." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air, his words a thinly veiled jab at his predecessor. "They came from before me, from people who didn't do their jobs right." Though he didn't name Obama, the audience caught the barb immediately. Trump continued, his tone sharp as he addressed the economy, rising costs, and the struggles of everyday Americans. Each point circled back to the same refrain, a mess inherited from past leadership. "The truth is, I've had to clean up what others left behind, broken systems, weak policies. They talked, I act. That's the difference." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some nodded in agreement, others exchanged uneasy glances. Trump's words were not just answers, they were an assault, a deliberate attempt to shift blame across the stage. "You can call it what you want," he said, smirking, "but the facts speak for themselves. We're dealing with the results of poor leadership that failed our workers, our borders, our future, and everyone knows who I'm talking about." A brief silence followed, the cameras capturing Obama's unflinching composure. His hands remained folded, his expression steady, exuding a quiet power that seemed to grow stronger in the face of Trump's provocation. Trump leaned back, satisfied, adding with a mock conciliatory tone, "I respect everyone who came before me, but not everyone was good at their job." The line drew awkward laughs, and the host glanced nervously at Obama, the tension in the room palpable. Clearing his throat, the host turned to Obama. "Thank you, Mr. President. Strong points there. Now, President Obama, what's your response?" The camera zoomed in on Obama's face as he offered a thoughtful nod, pausing for a moment that spoke volumes. The audience leaned forward, Trump's grin lingering as he waited for a retort. But Obama's demeanor remained unshaken, calm, measured, in control. "Let's talk about the real issues," he began, his voice smooth but firm, silencing the room. "No one's saying things are perfect. I know people are frustrated. Prices are high, families are struggling to buy homes, keep jobs, build security. But leadership isn't about pointing fingers. It's about taking responsibility and finding solutions." The crowd hung on his words, sensing something deeper than a political rebuttal. Trump shifted, his eyes narrowing, clearly irritated that Obama hadn't taken the bait. Obama continued, his tone personal, almost intimate. "I've met those families. I've looked into the eyes of parents working 2 jobs and still barely getting by. Young people drowning in debt, wondering if they'll ever catch a break. These aren't numbers, they're stories, your stories." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, his words striking a chord. Blaming someone else won't pay the bills, he added. It won't lower rent or gas prices. What changes things is listening, not arguing. A small wave of applause broke out, and Obama's faint smile conveyed quiet conviction. Leadership isn't about taking credit when things go right and shifting blame when they don't. It's about owning the challenges and finding solutions that help everyone, not just those who voted for you. The room's energy shifted, the earlier tension giving way to a sense of connection. Obama's words weren't about winning a debate, they were about reminding people of a shared humanity. We're in tough times, he acknowledged. Inflation, housing, job insecurity. I won't deny it, but America doesn't quit. We don't tear each other down. We rise, rebuild, and push forward together. The crowd erupted, applause swelling as Obama pressed on, his rhythm unbroken. I remember when they said we couldn't recover from the financial crisis, but we did. They said millions would never get health care, but we made it happen. They said we were too divided, yet we found common ground, not perfectly, but together. Trump shifted in his seat, his expression unreadable, the room's energy no longer his to command. Obama's tone softened, addressing the audience directly. This isn't about left or right, who's in charge now or who used to be. It's about who we are as a country. Do we turn on each other when things get hard, or do we roll up our sleeves and get to work? The applause grew louder, a collective release of tension. Obama paused, then turned slightly toward Trump. I understand it's easy to say someone else is to blame, but every president inherits challenges. The question isn't who caused them, it's who's willing to fix them. The line landed like a velvet-wrapped punch, drawing gasps and cheers. Obama's calm made his words cut deeper. America doesn't move forward when leaders argue instead of solve. People don't care about speeches, they care about better lives. The emotion in the room was palpable, heavy yet inspiring. A woman in the front row wiped away a tear moved by Obama's sincerity. He lowered his voice, speaking directly to the millions watching at home. To every family struggling, every worker, every young person building a future, your story matters. You matter. And despite what you hear, we're not as divided as we're told. There's more that connects us than separates us. The crowd erupted again, some standing, others clapping slowly, letting the message sink in. Obama's small, knowing smile returned, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment's weight. Across the stage, Trump's jaw tightened, the control he'd held earlier slipping away.
But Trump wasn't one to stay silent. As the applause lingered, he leaned forward, his voice sharp, cutting through the noise. You know, it's funny hearing all this talk about unity from someone who had 8 years to fix things and didn't. The room quieted, caught off guard by his interruption. We wouldn't have these problems if people in the past hadn't made terrible deals, opened our borders, let anyone come in, no matter where they're from or what they bring. The words hung heavy, a calculated jab not just at policy, but at Obama himself, echoing old birther conspiracies. Maybe, Trump added slowly, some people just don't belong here. Maybe they should go back where they came from. A stunned silence followed, the air turning cold. The host froze, unsure how to proceed. Trump glanced at Obama, waiting for a reaction, craving anger to exploit. But Obama didn't flinch. His expression deepened, not with rage, but with disappointment. "I've heard that kind of talk before," he said softly, his voice heavy with meaning. "Every time it reminds me how easy it is to use fear to divide." The crowd stirred, some clapping quietly. This country was built by people who came from somewhere else, who dreamed of something better. My story, your story, our story, they all began somewhere else. His sincerity silenced the room. We don't tell people they don't belong because of how they look or where they were born. That's not leadership. That's fear dressed up as power. The applause swelled, a release of the tension Trump's words had created. Trump sat back, arms crossed, his smirk fading. Obama continued, his voice rising with conviction. America's story isn't one of exclusion, it's one of expansion. We didn't become great by shutting doors. We became great by opening them, by believing anyone who works hard has a place here. The crowd roared, the energy shifting decisively in Obama's favor. Trump pressed on undeterred. That's a nice speech, Barack, but talking about unity doesn't fix the border or pay the bills. When you were in charge, where was the compassion? You didn't fix immigration or the economy, you left a mess, and I'm cleaning it up. Obama's eyes flickered, a sign he'd had enough. Respect, he said, his tone measured but firm, isn't shown by who you insult. It's shown by how you treat those who can't fight back. The audience roared, drowning out Trump's attempt to reply. When you tell people to leave their own country, when you divide Americans based on where they come from, that's not making America great, it's making it smaller. The applause surged, a wave of agreement washing over the room. Obama looked directly at Trump. The strength of this nation isn't in the loudest voice. It's in the quiet courage of people who work hard, raise their kids, and believe this country belongs to them no matter what anyone says. Trump's smirk vanished. His usual fire dimmed. Obama let the silence linger, then added softly, "You can mock me, question my birthplace, my beliefs, but you can't erase what I represent. Millions of Americans who refuse to give up on this country." The words echoed, final and unshakable. Trump's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond immediately, the crowd's energy now firmly with Obama. Sensing the shift, Trump leaned forward, his tone sharper, more personal. "You talk a lot about family values, Barack, about protecting what's sacred, but what does that mean to you?" Obama raised an eyebrow, sensing a trap, but meeting it head-on. "It means exactly what it sounds like," he replied evenly. "Family, love, loyalty, things everyone understands." Trump chuckled, but Obama pivoted, his voice colder. "That's interesting, because I remember some interviews where you said unusual things about your daughter, Ivanka. You once said on television, 'If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.' You thought that was funny." The crowd gasped, the air thick with discomfort. Trump's face reddened. "Oh, come on, it was a joke," he snapped. Obama didn't relent. "A joke, maybe, but words matter, Donald, especially from a president. When your words make people question your respect for women, your own daughter, that's not leadership. That's weakness disguised as charm." The silence was deafening, every eye on Trump, who gripped the table's edge, struggling to respond. Obama pressed further, his tone deliberate. "You talk a lot about family values, but greatness isn't built on arrogance. It's built on respect for your people, your family, your country." Trump laughed defensively. "Respect? I've built more for this country than you ever did. You don't know my family." Obama tilted his head. "You're right. I don't. But a man's words tell you everything about his values." Then, with precision, he asked, "Tell me, Donald, who gave birth to Barron?" Trump froze, disbelief flashing across his face. "What kind of question is that?" he snapped. Obama's tone remained calm. "It's a fair one. You've questioned my birth, my identity, my right to belong. I'm just wondering if you'd answer the same kind of question." The crowd gasped, some clapping nervously. Trump shook his head, forcing a laugh. "This is ridiculous. I don't need to answer nonsense like that. Maybe the problem is we keep inviting guests who weren't even born in the USA." The jab was desperate, and the crowd sensed it. Boos echoed from the back, the tension electric. Obama nodded, as if to say, "There it is." Trump stood abruptly, mumbling about an important call and waving off the host's pleas to stay. "I have a country to run," he said, exiting the stage. The cameras followed briefly, then cut back to Obama, still seated, hands folded, eyes calm. The crowd murmured, not about Trump's words, but about what he couldn't face. Obama waited, then spoke softly. "This is what leadership looks like when it forgets its humanity, when power becomes more important than principle." He turned to the audience. "We can't afford leaders who run from accountability, not when people are losing jobs, homes, faith in the system." The silence was profound. Even Trump supporters reflected quietly. "You saw two ways of leading tonight, one built on ego, the other on empathy. The choice we make will shape our future." The applause erupted, loud and cathartic. Obama's expression remained solemn. He said,
When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Our children are watching. Let's teach them that respect is earned, not demanded, that greatness comes from humility, compassion, and courage. The crowd stood, applause thundering through the studio. Some cheered, others clapped with quiet admiration, all feeling the weight of the moment. As the lights softened, Obama's small, reflective smile lingered. The debate was over, but its impact was just beginning. Trump's absence spoke louder than his words, while Obama's calm dignity resonated like a beacon. The fight for integrity, for decency had been laid bare, and one truth remained. When the shouting fades, the voice of quiet strength endures, etched into history's memory.